What would an Arab version of NATO mean for the United States and the world? I think it'd be a great thing. The more countries that are in a mutual defense agreement means that there's more of a deterrence for war and less of a likelihood for any of these countries to be attacked recklessly. The only question is which Arab nations would be included, because there have been a couple proposals. During our current president's first administration around 2018, 2019, he floated the idea of something called MESA, the Middle East Strategic Alliance, including Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar. But that idea never came into being due to the continued blockade of Qatar by the four other countries, the UAE, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. And then when the Biden administration came in, they just didn't really prioritize it, and they let the idea fade. Iran has also made the suggestion of having a Muslim version of NATO, but that would never really fly just because they do have such an intense rivalry with Saudi Arabia, and they would be constantly vying for dominance in this alliance. Now, Egypt has also suggested having an Arabic version of NATO as a result of the September 9th attacks, and that did not include Turkey and Iran. And even though Turkey and Iran were excluded from these talks, the Gulf states still rejected the proposal. What's ironic is that both Qatar and the United Arab Emirates rejected the plan, and those two countries are bitter rivals, but they rejected the plan for the same reason, because they did not want to have to deal with Saudi dominance in this alliance. And this is even more pointed since Saudi Arabia made a mutual defense agreement with Pakistan. So now, if India has any kind of conflict with Pakistan, they will be dealing with Saudi Arabia. And if this mutual defense agreement occurred with Egypt and all of the other Gulf states, then if any kind of retaliation happened towards Saudi Arabia as a result of a Pakistani-Indian conflict, then the Gulf states would have to contend with India as well. So for now, it doesn't look like it's a possibility just because the countries in the region can't agree on who can lead, unlike Europe, who fully agrees that the United States leads them. At least before, for like the past 75 years. But now, you guys are watching the news, right? If you guys are wondering, my daughter did this to me yesterday, and she insisted I keep it on for as long as I can. But even still, a Middle Eastern version of NATO would be a huge benefit for the United States because they would not have to invest so much of their military towards deterrence and defense. If the alliance was strong and stable, it would most likely be a great guarantee for the stable price of oil, and the United States would not have to spend so much of its resources maintaining it there. They would shift those resources over to containing China. And while the United States would be devoting their own resources to containing whatever is going on in the Pacific, the Middle Eastern version of NATO would devote a lot of its efforts towards containing Iran, because there's no way Iran would be included in this group. Then there's the fact that an alliance of this caliber would be a huge boost to the United States military-industrial complex, whether or not you think it's a good thing. We are looking at a chart of the top weapons importers, and you could see a lot of these Middle Eastern countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Kuwait. The United States is their top weapons supplier. So if the United States were to pull out their own military assets, these countries would go on a huge U.S. defense spending spree, and it would do great for our defense contractors. It would also lead to a great deal of military and economic cooperation with the whole region. They would have to do a lot of intense training drills to make sure that they knew how to integrate properly. And I bet you that an Arabic version of NATO would stomp out all of the proxy wars that are taking place in the region. And once they manage that, they would start doing the same thing in Northern Africa. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of Americans, at least the ones that I know, they look at the Middle East and Islam as some kind of like Mordor and Sauron and all that stuff. But if you look at the history of Europe and the United States for the past 500 years, we were kind of that guy. It doesn't matter if you think it was a good or a bad thing, but Europe and America were able to hold the world hostage for centuries. And one of the reasons why they were so successful in doing that is that they were able to keep every other country or every other tribe within a country at each other's throats. Now, the only problem is this has been tried before. Starting from the 1950s, there's something called the Joint Defense and Economic Cooperation Treaty between the states of the Arab League, and that was put in 1950. Technically, it's still in effect today, but it's primarily an economic cooperative, and they haven't done much towards military strengthening and cooperation. In 1955, they tried to set up the Baghdad Pact. It did not work. By the 1980s, they tried to form something called the GCC, which was the Gulf Central Council. It didn't work. They tried it again in the early 2000s. It didn't work. And then around 2015, 2017, they tried to have another version of the Arab League. It didn't work. And forgive me, it wasn't the Gulf Central Council, it was the Gulf Cooperation Council. Whoops. So for right now, while the idea of an Arab version of NATO is a great thing, it's just that. It's just an idea. It's sadly a pipe dream because these countries still have so much tension going on between the two, and they would all resent and resist anyone who tried to step up to be a leader, even if it was Saudi Arabia or Egypt. I am the Geo Husar, and if I taught you something, let me know. Thanks for watching.